So those are the main elements of the story which Gia Tolentino tells about Girl Boss. So now let's look at the points of analysis which Gia Tolentino pulls or extracts from that story. Analysis is deep, profound thinking about a topic. And as I said earlier in this lecture, analysis is essentially when you're telling a story. Analysis is when you explain the point of the story. You explain why the story matters and why it has something to teach us of value. There are 3 moves that you can make when you're trying to discover and share the point of your story. You can make the implicit explicit. That's when you something which was implied, meaning it was suggested but not overtly stated. So a common phrase for this is reading between the lines. So you can take something that was implied or suggested by your story and make that explicitly stated. You can also look for patterns. So show how your story compares to something else, show how they're similar and therefore representative of a certain kind of trend. Or the flip side of that coin is you could show how this story is an anomaly. So it's really unique and weird and different. And that's what makes it interesting and worth reflecting upon and learning from. And then finally, you can form questions and explanations. So you can show how the elements in your observation or story lead to interesting questions. And you could take the next step by providing answers or explanations for those questions. Gia Tolentino provides a good example for these first 2 moves. Her analysis really starts on page 177 with this line. Girl Boss is meant to scan as a deeply feminist endeavor, and it generally does, at least to its participants, who have been bombarded for many years with the spurious, embarrassing, and limitlessly seductive sales pitch that feminism means, first and foremost, the public demonstration of getting yours. So in this analysis, Gia Tolentino is reading between the lines by showing what the culture, the message of Girl Boss is really saying. So she's reading between the lines, seeing what's sort of implied or suggested by Girl Boss and making it explicit. This is obviously opinionated. So Gia Tolentino is now interpreting the observations, the objective, factual observations that she provided before at the beginning of this essay. And she's now interpreting them by reading between the lines. So Gia Tolentino believes that the implicit hidden message of Girl Boss is that feminism doesn't have to be about collective action that benefits women as a group or that benefits society as a whole, but rather that feminism is first and foremost about achieving personal success. That if you as a woman become rich and successful and powerful, then that is inherently feminist. In other words, she believes the Girl Boss is implicitly promoting this idea that to be feminist, you don't necessarily have to look out and support other women. You can look out for yourself and your own self-interest and take care of yourself. And that in and of itself will be feminist, so long as you happen to be a woman. So Tolentino's main analytical move is to take this implicit message and state it explicitly to make it clear and explicitly stated for her audience. She also looks for patterns and connects it with similar things happening around other people at the same time to show how this is, this demonstrates a trend. So she shows how this is similar to the message in Sheryl Sandberg's book Lean In, which was published in 2013. She also connects this message with the self-care movement. So, for example, she connects it to Gwyneth Paltrow and Arianna Huffington, people who sell things like $65 velvet-lined charging stations and face serums. They sell these things as feminist actions. And she makes the point that this is an anomaly. So she compares this to past forms of feminism, which was very much about collective action. She writes, at a time of unprecedented freedom and power for women, at a time when we were more poised than ever to understand our lives politically, we got, instead of expanded reproductive protections, equal pay, and federally mandated family leave, and subsidized childcare, and a higher minimum wage, things that would actually help women as a whole. We got the sort of self-congratulatory empowerment feminism that corporations can get behind, the kind that comes with merchandise, mugs that say male tears. We got conferences, endless conferences. So the main piece of analysis, the main point that comes out of Tolentino's story of Girl Boss is that we can best understand the market-friendly form of feminism, which became popular in the 2000s, we can best understand that as a scam. According to her interpretation, it's a scam because it's claiming to help and support women as a collective, when really it's all about personal advancement and personal success. And at the end of the day, it's really only helping the women at the top of these companies. At the end of the day, Girl Boss is primarily and maybe exclusively benefiting its founder, Sophia Amoruso. Okay, so now we have an understanding of the kinds of content that we're expected to include in a reflective essay. Now I'd like to provide you with a detailed outline of how we can organize that content. This outline was based on Gia Tolentino's essay. Her essay is a wonderful model for a reflective essay, so I hope that you do read it again as a model for your own essay. One thing I'll note about that is obviously it has, it's much longer than your reflective essay will be. Because basically what Gia Tolentino was doing is, she wrote 7 reflective essays. So you could look at each of the 7 sections in the chapter as an example, a model of a reflective essay. And then obviously taken as a whole, it combines to make one big reflective essay. So first, you're going to have an introduction. That introduction should state the topic. So it should make very clear what the topic of your essay will be. And it's helpful to do so with a hook, something that grabs the reader's attention and makes them interested in your topic. So the title and introduction of Tolentino's essay makes it clear that her topic is scamming and millennials. And she introduces this topic through a very interesting hook, a story about Fyre Festival, which was a notoriously fake festival that scammed a bunch of millennials. Your introduction should also provide any important context. So define any key terms, technical terms, or unfamiliar terms your audience will need to know to understand your reflections. Give them an overview of your topic, any background information that they'll need to understand your topic. And in a reflective essay, that background information can often be provided in the form of a story. It's the beginning of the story that you'll be telling throughout your essay. Your introduction should also clearly state your research question or the main point that can be gained by reflecting on your topic. In other words, it should have a research question or your thesis statement. And you could choose to state only the research question and not include your main point or your thesis. If you do this, make sure that your thesis is in the conclusion. For example, we'll find Tolentino's thesis statement at the beginning of the final paragraph on page 162. This is when she writes that, so her main point is that millennials are the product of, quote, a cultural shift that has, over the previous decade, subtly but permanently changed the character of the nation, making scamming, the abuse of trust for profit, seem simply like the way things are going to be. In other words, the main point of her story about Fyre Festival, and the main point for all of the 7 stories which follow, is that millennials have been taught, have been brought up to believe that scamming is the only way to succeed in an incredibly precarious competitive environment. After the introduction, you'll have the body of your essay, which is made up of your story and your analysis. And we went into a lot of detail already about what that looks like. I'll simply add that you can organize the body of your essay in two ways. So option one, you could tell the complete story at the beginning, and then you can follow up your story with analysis. For example, maybe you tell your story in 3 paragraphs, and then you would have 3 paragraphs of analysis following that story. Option number 2 would be to be integrating your analysis into your story while you tell it. So, for example, you would have an element of your story and followed by analysis in each paragraph. Finally, you're going to write a conclusion, and that conclusion should reinforce or state your main point. So if you didn't state your main point, if you didn't state your thesis in the introduction, then you want to make sure you state it clearly at the beginning of your conclusion. A good conclusion will summarize your supporting points and then close with something interesting, which will encourage the reader to continue thinking about your topic and your reflection. So you could do one of the following. You could speculate about the future, what might happen next. You could close with a quotation. You could close with the final end to your story. This is a good option if the ending is particularly dramatic or surprising. Or you could close with a question, showing how you or the reader could continue this reflection in another direction. Okay, let's do a quick recap of the most important things we've learned about the reflective essay genre. First, it's very important that we understand the purpose of a reflective essay. That purpose is to share a deeper understanding of our subject through careful thought or consideration of a topic. For example, Gia Tolentino is trying to share a deeper understanding of millennials by reflecting on those 7 topics in her chapter. Similarly, the prompt for your reflective essay asks you to share a deeper understanding of millennials or Gen Z through careful thought or consideration of a topic of your choosing. The other important thing to remember from this lesson is that genres are typically guided by general research questions. The genre of the reflective essay is guided by the research question, what are the implications of blank? What can we learn from thinking about a person, a work of art, an event, an object, or an issue, whatever it is that is the topic of your essay? The third major point is about the content of a reflective essay. Reflective essays have 2 main types of content: detailed observations, often in the form of a story, and analysis, which reflects on and gives the main point of that story. We talked about 3 major moves of analysis and looked at examples from Gia Tolentino's article. Those moves are make the implicit explicit, point out patterns or anomalies, and pose interesting questions about what your observations all mean. Finally, I gave you a general outline for a reflective essay. So that's all I've got. Thank you very much for watching, and good luck with your own reflective essays.